Rain crashed against the black windows of the backstage hallway when Jimin suddenly grabbed Jungkook's wrist hard enough to stop him from walking away. His breath shook, eyes glossy under the dim emergency lights, and before Jungkook could even ask what was wrong, Jimin whispered with a broken voice, "I always look for you first." The world outside the arena was deafening. Thousands of fans screamed their names beyond the concrete walls, camera flashes exploding like lightning in the dark. But inside the narrow hallway, everything felt terrifyingly silent. Jungkook froze, not because of the words, but because of the fear inside Jimin's eyes. For years, Park Jimin had mastered the art of smiling while bleeding inside. He laughed loudly during interviews, teased the members endlessly, danced like fire under stage lights, and held himself together even when exhaustion hollowed his bones. Yet Jungkook knew every version of him, the real him, the fragile one hidden behind perfect expressions, and tonight that hidden version looked seconds away from collapsing. "Jimin," Jungkook lowered his voice carefully. "What happened?" Jimin looked away immediately. That was his habit whenever he was trying not to cry. The fluorescent lights above them buzzed softly. Somewhere far down the corridor, staff members hurried past while walkie-talkies crackled with urgency. The concert had ended 30 minutes ago, but the adrenaline still lingered heavily in the air, mixed with sweat, hairspray, wet fabric, and the metallic scent of rain carried through the open loading dock nearby. Jimin released Jungkook's wrist slowly. "It's nothing," he lied. Jungkook almost laughed at that. Nothing. Jimin had been strange for weeks. He stopped sleeping properly. He stayed alone during meals. He kept disappearing after rehearsals without explanation. Sometimes Jungkook would catch him staring blankly at his phone with an unreadable expression before quickly forcing a smile the moment someone noticed. And tonight during the final song, Jimin missed choreography for the first time in years. Jimin never missed choreography. "You scared me out there," Jungkook admitted quietly. Jimin swallowed hard. For a moment he looked dangerously vulnerable, like someone standing at the edge of a cliff, pretending they weren't afraid of falling. Then footsteps approached. Both of them instinctively stepped apart. Manager Sejin appeared from around the corner with a tense face. "The cars are ready. We need to leave now." Nodded immediately and walked away before Jungkook could stop him again. But Jungkook noticed it, the trembling in Jimin's hands, and suddenly a terrible feeling settled deep in his chest. Something was very wrong. The drive back to the hotel was unusually quiet. Rain streamed down the tinted windows, while the city lights blurred into streaks of gold and white outside. The members were exhausted after the concert, some scrolling through their phones, others half asleep in their seats. Jimin sat by the far window wearing an oversized black hoodie pulled low over his face. Too quiet, too distant. Jungkook kept glancing toward him. Normally Jimin would be laughing at Taehyung's jokes or singing random songs off-key just to annoy Namjoon. He hated silence. He hated letting the atmosphere feel heavy, but tonight he looked trapped inside his own thoughts. At one point the van hit a sharp bump in the road, and Jimin flinched violently. Jungkook noticed immediately, so did no one else, that hurt more than it should have. Because Jungkook realized he had started memorizing every tiny detail about Jimin years ago without meaning to. The way Jimin rubbed his thumb against his fingers whenever anxiety crept in. The way he bit the inside of his cheek while hiding frustration. The way his smile became smaller whenever he was truly tired. Jungkook knew all of it, maybe too well. The hotel lobby was flooded with warm golden light when they finally arrived. Staff members guided them quickly through private elevators to avoid waiting fans outside. As the elevator doors closed, Jungkook caught Jimin staring blankly at his own reflection in the mirrored wall. He looked exhausted, beautiful, and heartbreakingly lonely. The elevator dinged softly at their floor. Everyone slowly stepped out. Everyone except Jimin. The doors nearly closed before Jungkook quickly held them open. Jimin blinked like he had been dragged back from somewhere far away. "You coming?" He forced a tiny smile. "Yeah." Instead of heading toward his room with the others, Jimin suddenly turned down another hallway. Jungkook frowned. "Where are you going?" "Just need air." "At 2 a.m, Jimin shrugged weakly, then he disappeared around the corner. Something inside Jungkook snapped. He followed him immediately. The rooftop door creaked loudly when Jungkook pushed it open. Cold wind slammed into him instantly. Rain had weakened into a soft drizzle, coating the rooftop in silver reflections beneath the city lights. Seoul stretched endlessly beyond the hotel skyline, glowing under the storm clouds like a sleepless ocean of neon. And there Jimin stood alone near the edge, dangerously close. His hoodie fluttered violently in the wind, For one horrifying second, Jungkook's chest tightened so painfully he could barely breathe. Jimin turned, startled. "You scared me," he murmured. "You shouldn't stand that close." Glanced behind himself at the edge before giving a faint smile. "I wasn't going to jump." Jungkook hated that his first instinct was relief. The rain dampened their hair slowly as silence settled between them again. Then Jimin spoke without looking at him. "Do you ever feel tired of being needed all the time?" Jungkook frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Jimin laughed softly, but there was no happiness in it. "Everyone always wants something from us." His voice almost disappeared beneath the wind. "Perfection, smiles, strength, energy." He paused. "Sometimes I don't know which version of myself is real anymore." Stepped closer carefully. "You don't have to pretend around me." That almost broke him. Jimin lowered his head immediately, shoulders trembling once, and Jungkook realized with shock that he was crying silently, not dramatically, not loudly, just quietly falling apart. "I'm tired, Jungkook." Hearing that hurt more than Jungkook expected. Because Jimin was always the one comforting everyone else. Always the one holding people together. Seeing him like this felt wrong, human, painfully human. Without thinking, Jungkook reached for him, his fingers wrapped gently around Jimin's cold hand, and Jimin held on immediately, too quickly, like he had been waiting for someone to notice he was drowning. "I keep searching for you," Jimin whispered shakily. "Every room, every stage, every crowd." He laughed bitterly through tears. "Even when thousands of people are there, I still look for you first." Jungkook's heartbeat stumbled. The city noise below suddenly felt distant. Jimin finally looked at him directly. Eyes shining with exhaustion and fear. "You make things feel safe." The confession settled heavily between them, not romantic, not simple, something deeper, something terrifying because it was real. Jungkook didn't know what to say, because the truth was, he did the exact same thing every performance, every airport, every interview, every chaotic moment. He always searched for Jimin first too, as if confirming his existence made the world steadier. The rain slowly soaked through their clothes, while neither of them moved. Then Jimin suddenly smiled faintly, a real smile this time, small, fragile. "You know what scares me most?" "What?" "That one day you'll stop looking for me back." Jungkook's chest ached instantly. He stepped closer until barely inches separated them. "I could never do that." Jimin's breath caught softly. For a moment neither spoke. The city lights reflected in the tears still clinging to Jimin's lashes, and Jungkook realized something terrifyingly simple. No matter how loud the world became, no matter how many people surrounded them, some part of him would always search for Jimin first too. And maybe that was the beginning of everything they were too afraid to name. The rain finally stopped just before dawn. Thin clouds drifted slowly above the city, while the rooftop remained soaked in silver light, cold air clinging to their damp clothes. Neither Jimin nor Jungkook noticed how much time had passed. The world below continued moving endlessly, cars cutting through empty streets, distant sirens echoing somewhere far away, neon signs flickering through the fading storm. But up there, everything felt suspended between confession and silence. Jimin was still holding Jungkook's hand, not tightly anymore, just enough to feel him there, and somehow that felt even more dangerous. Jungkook looked down at their hands briefly before lifting his eyes toward Jimin again. Wet strands of hair clung to Jimin's forehead, making him look softer than usual, younger somehow. Vulnerable in a way he rarely allowed anyone to see. "You should sleep," Jungkook said quietly. Jimin smiled faintly. "You sound like Namjoon." "That's offensive." A weak laugh escaped Jimin's lips. It was small but real. Jungkook felt relief spread through him so suddenly it almost hurt. He hadn't realized how tense his body had become tonight until now. For the first time in weeks, Jimin looked like he could finally breathe, but the exhaustion remained in his eyes, the kind that sleep couldn't fix. Jungkook hesitated before speaking again. "You've been avoiding everyone." Jimin's expression dimmed immediately. "I know." Wind shifted softly around them. Jimin stared out across the skyline again, jaw tightening slightly. "Because I'm tired of pretending I'm okay." Honesty in his voice stunned Jungkook. Jimin usually hid pain beautifully, too beautifully. Even during the hardest years, he smiled through injuries, exhaustion, panic attacks, loneliness. He hated becoming a burden, hated worrying people, so hearing him admit weakness out loud felt strangely intimate. "I thought if I stayed away long enough," Jimin continued softly, "maybe nobody would notice." "I noticed." The words came out instantly. Jimin looked at him again, and Jungkook suddenly felt exposed, because it was true, he always noticed, when Jimin skipped meals. When his smile looked forced, when his energy disappeared halfway through rehearsals, when he stared too long at nothing. Jungkook noticed all of it, Sometimes before Jimin noticed himself, the silence stretched between them again, warmer this time despite the cold air. Then Jimin asked quietly why. Jungkook blinked. Why what? Why do you always notice me first? His heartbeat stumbled hard. Jimin's voice wasn't teasing, it wasn't playful, it sounded genuinely confused. As if he truly didn't understand why someone would pay that much attention to him. Jungkook looked away briefly toward the glowing city. How was he supposed to answer that? How could he explain something he didn't fully understand himself? Because Jimin had become instinct, natural as breathing. Jungkook searched for him automatically in every crowded room without even thinking anymore. Not because he had to, because some part of him relaxed only after finding him. You're important to me, Jungkook finally said quietly. Jimin stared at him for several seconds, then he lowered his eyes quickly. The tiny reaction alone made Jungkook's chest tighten. You always say things like that so easily, Jimin murmured. What does that mean? It means, Jimin paused, searching for words carefully. You don't realize how much your words affect people. Jungkook frowned slightly, but before he could answer, Jimin suddenly pulled his hand away. The warmth vanished instantly. I should go before the staff notices we disappeared. His tone had changed again, walls rebuilding, distance returning. Jungkook hated it immediately. Jimin stopped walking. Jungkook swallowed once, then carefully asked the question sitting heavily in his chest since earlier. What happened tonight during the concert? Jimin froze completely. The rooftop suddenly felt colder. For several long seconds he said nothing, then quietly, I saw someone in the crowd. Jungkook blinked. What? Jimin laughed softly under his breath, though it sounded bitter. Crazy, right? Who? Jimin hesitated, then finally turned around slowly. Fear flickered briefly across his face. The person who used to stalk me. The words hit Jungkook like ice water. What? Jimin rubbed both hands over his face tiredly. It started years ago. Messages, letters, threats. His voice remained calm, but Jungkook could hear the tension underneath it. The company handled most of it quietly. You tell me, because it ended. But you said you saw them. I thought I did. Jimin looked genuinely shaken now, not dramatic, not exaggerated, truly afraid. I saw someone standing near the side section during the final song. His breathing became uneven again. Same black cap, same mask, just staring at me. Jungkook felt anger rise instantly. Did you tell security? Jimin nodded weakly. They checked already, nobody found anything. You're still scared. Didn't answer. That was enough. Jungkook stepped closer again instinctively. We're not staying alone tonight. Immediately shook his head. Serious. It's fine. It's not fine. Firmness in Jungkook's voice surprised even himself. Jimin looked startled too. Jungkook rarely sounded this serious unless he was genuinely upset. You've been dealing with this alone? Jungkook asked quietly. Jimin looked guilty. That's not fair. A flicker of pain crossed Jimin's face. I didn't want everyone worrying again. You think hiding everything makes it easier? No, Jimin admitted softly. But I'm used to it. That sentence hurt more than anything else tonight. Used to it. Used to carrying fear alone. Used to suffering quietly. Used to smiling through panic. Jungkook suddenly understood why Jimin looked so exhausted lately. Not just physically, emotionally. He had been living in survival mode for weeks, maybe longer. Without thinking, Jungkook reached up and gently brushed damp hair away from Jimin's eyes. The movement was instinctive, tender. Both of them froze afterward. Jimin's breath caught softly. Jungkook's fingers lingered for half a second too long against his skin, warm despite the cold. Then reality slammed back into them. Jungkook pulled away quickly, but the air between them had already changed. Jimin looked shaken now for an entirely different reason. Before either of them could speak, Jungkook's phone suddenly vibrated loudly in his pocket. The sound shattered everything. Jungkook glanced at the screen. Taehyung, he answered immediately. Where are you two? Taehyung sounded half asleep and annoyed. The managers are freaking out. Looked at Jimin briefly. We're coming down. Before Namjoon starts assuming you got kidnapped. The call ended. Silence returned instantly. But now it felt fragile, dangerous. Jimin exhaled slowly before forcing another small smile onto his face. The familiar one he used whenever he was preparing to hide himself again. Jungkook noticed immediately. And suddenly he realized something terrifying. He didn't want rooftop Jimin to disappear. Not the honest one. Not the vulnerable one. Not the version standing here with tired eyes and trembling hands asking silently to be understood. But Jimin stepped back anyway, walls rebuilding piece by piece. Go, he said softly. Jungkook nodded slowly, yet as they walked toward the rooftop door together, he couldn't shake the strange feeling growing heavier inside his chest. Because tonight had changed something between them. Neither of them knew exactly what, but both of them felt it.
The hallway outside the rooftop felt unnaturally warm after the freezing wind upstairs. Jimin walked half a step ahead, hands shoved deep into his hoodie pockets, eyes lowered toward the carpeted floor as if avoiding invisible thoughts chasing him. The elevator lights reflected softly against his pale skin, and Jungkook noticed how exhausted he looked now that the adrenaline had faded. Not physically exhausted, emotionally drained. The kind of exhaustion that made even breathing feel heavy. When the elevator doors opened, loud voices immediately spilled into the hallway. There they are. Taehyung leaned dramatically against the wall outside their rooms, arms crossed. Namjoon stood nearby looking equally relieved and annoyed, while Hoseok sat on the floor scrolling through his phone. You disappeared for almost an hour, Namjoon said. The staff thought reporters followed you somewhere. Instantly straightened. That familiar idle smile appeared again so naturally it almost scared Jungkook. Sorry, Jimin said lightly. Needed fresh air, as if Jungkook hadn't just seen him standing near the edge of a rooftop looking like his soul was collapsing. Taehyung narrowed his eyes suspiciously. Why do you both look like divorced parents in a drama? Jungkook nearly choked. Jimin let out a startled laugh before covering his face immediately. For a brief second, the heaviness cracked apart. Hoseok burst into laughter. He's not wrong. Please sleep, Namjoon sighed tiredly. All of you. Members slowly disappeared back into their rooms one by one, still teasing each other quietly. Soon the hallway became silent again except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. Only Jimin and Jungkook remained. The smile faded from Jimin's face almost instantly. Jungkook hated how quickly it disappeared. You okay? He asked quietly. Jimin hesitated before nodding once, lie, again. But Jungkook didn't push this time. Instead, he stepped closer and held out his hotel keycard. Stay in my room tonight. Blinked in surprise. Not asking. A faint smile touched Jimin's lips. You're really stubborn. Really bad at taking care of yourself. That's rude. That's true. Looked away to hide another tiny smile, and somehow that tiny expression affected Jungkook more than it should have, because seeing Jimin smile genuinely felt rare lately, like watching sunlight after weeks of rain. Finally, Jimin sighed in defeat. Fine. The room, darkness, greeted them softly. Only the city lights outside illuminated the space through tall windows overlooking Seoul. Jungkook tossed his jacket onto a chair while Jimin quietly sat at the edge of the bed, shoulders slumped with exhaustion. For a while neither spoke. The silence wasn't awkward anymore, just tired. Jungkook opened the mini fridge and handed Jimin a bottle of water. You barely drank anything after the concert. Jimin accepted it quietly. Thanks. His fingers brushed Jungkook's briefly. Both noticed, neither mentioned it. Jungkook sat beside him carefully, leaving enough space not to overwhelm him. You should tell the company if the stalking started again. Twisted the bottle cap slowly between his fingers. I know. Then why do you sound unsure? Because I'm scared they'll think I'm overreacting. Jungkook frowned immediately. No one would think that. You'd be surprised. Jimin's voice had become strangely distant again. He stared down at the untouched bottle in his hands. When it first happened years ago, people kept telling me not to let it affect me. He laughed softly without humor. As if fear works like a switch. Jungkook felt anger tighten in his chest. The idea of Jimin going through that alone made him sick. What exactly did they send you? Jimin went silent, too silent, then finally, pictures. Jungkook's stomach dropped. Pictures of me leaving schedules, entering buildings, sleeping during flights. Jimin's fingers trembled slightly now. Some were taken so close that... He stopped himself abruptly. That what? Jimin swallowed hard. I realized they had been near me for months without me noticing. Room suddenly felt colder. Jungkook stared at him in disbelief. No wonder Jimin had become anxious. No wonder he kept looking over his shoulder lately. Did the company catch them? They thought they did. The word echoed unpleasantly in Jungkook's mind. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly again in the distance. Jimin rubbed tiredly at his eyes before quietly admitting, Sometimes I still feel watched. Looked at him carefully. Jimin was trying so hard to stay calm, but the fear underneath remained visible now that the mask had cracked open. And suddenly Jungkook realized something else. Jimin wasn't just afraid of the stalker. He was afraid of becoming weak, afraid of burdening people, afraid of being seen vulnerable. You know, Jungkook said softly, you don't always have to be strong. Smiled faintly without looking at him. Easy for you to say. What's that supposed to mean? You make strength look natural. Jungkook almost laughed at that. If only Jimin knew, if only he understood how much Jungkook himself depended on him too. You think I don't fall apart sometimes? Jungkook asked quietly. That finally made Jimin look up. Jungkook leaned back slightly against the headboard, eyes fixed on the dark ceiling. There were days I couldn't handle the pressure either. His voice became softer. Days I felt like if I disappointed people even once, everything would collapse. Listened silently. But whenever that happened, Jungkook smiled faintly to himself. You were always there first. Jimin's expression shifted slowly, surprise, emotion, pain. You stayed up with me when I couldn't sleep. Jungkook continued quietly. You checked if I ate. You noticed when I was pretending to be okay. His eyes finally moved toward Jimin. So why do you think you don't deserve the same thing back? Jimin looked completely still, like the words had reached somewhere deep inside him. For several seconds neither spoke. Then Jimin suddenly laughed weakly under his breath and covered his eyes with one hand. What? You really don't realize how dangerous you are. Jungkook blinked. What? The things you say. Jimin lowered his hand slowly, eyes shining again. You make people feel too much. Atmosphere shifted instantly, heavier, warmer, too close. Jungkook felt his heartbeat speeding up again. Jimin looked at him in a way that made breathing strangely difficult, soft, unprotected. Then the hotel lights flickered suddenly, both startled slightly. A second later, the entire room went dark. Seriously, Jungkook muttered. Outside, thunder cracked loudly across the sky. The storm had returned. Only faint moonlight filtered through the windows now, painting silver edges along Jimin's face. And somehow the darkness made everything feel more intimate, more honest. Jimin laughed quietly. This feels like a horror movie, the one attracting creepy situations lately. That's rude. You said that already. Jimin shook his head, smiling faintly again. Then another thunderclap exploded outside, much louder this time. Almost immediately, the lights snapped back on, and both of them froze because taped to the outside of the hotel window, pressed directly against the glass from the other side, was a single photograph, a blurry photograph of Jimin entering tonight's concert venue, taken only hours earlier. Across the bottom, written in dark black ink, were 4 words. I found you again. Jungkook moved first. The moment he saw the photograph taped against the glass, instinct slammed through his body like electricity. He crossed the room in seconds and ripped the curtain shut so violently the metal rings scraped harshly against the rod. What the hell? Jimin had gone completely pale. All color drained from his face as he stared toward the covered window, breathing unevenly now. The bottle in his hand slipped slightly, water spilling across his fingers onto the sheets. Jungkook grabbed the photograph carefully after opening the curtain just enough to reach it. His chest tightened immediately. It was real, not edited, not fake. A grainy zoomed-in photo of Jimin entering the arena through the underground entrance earlier tonight. Security staff blurred in the background, rain streaking across the image. Jimin's face partially hidden beneath a cap. Someone had been close, way too close. And beneath the picture, I found you again. The handwriting looked rushed and aggressive, ink smeared slightly from the rain. Jungkook felt anger rise so fast it almost made him dizzy. How did this even get here? He muttered. This floor is private, Jimin whispered. That was the worst part. Only staff and members had access to this level. The realization settled heavily between them. Jimin stood slowly from the bed, but Jungkook immediately blocked him from the window. Jimin's voice trembled slightly. Jungkook, don't look. Jimin already had, and Jungkook knew that expression, fear mixed with humiliation, the feeling of safety being ripped away. Jungkook grabbed his phone instantly and called security. His voice remained calm somehow despite the fury burning inside him. There's been a breach on our floor, he said sharply. Someone left something outside my hotel window. The staff member on the other end immediately panicked. Jungkook barely listened. His attention remained fixed entirely on Jimin. Because Jimin looked terrifyingly still now, too still, like he was retreating into himself again. Jungkook said softly after hanging up. Look at me. Jimin didn't respond immediately. Then finally his eyes lifted slowly, and Jungkook's chest ached instantly. There was fear there, but worse than fear, resignation, as if some part of Jimin had expected this to happen eventually. I knew it, Jimin whispered. No, I knew they were back. Stepped closer immediately. This isn't your fault. Laughed weakly, but it sounded hollow. You know what's funny? After a while you start wondering if maybe it is. Don't say that. They keep following me, watching me. His voice cracked slightly now. Maybe I did something wrong without realizing. Jimin. The sharpness in Jungkook's tone finally stopped him. Jungkook stared directly into his eyes. You did nothing wrong. Silence, heavy, breathing unsteady between them. Then suddenly Jimin looked away again and rubbed both hands over his face harshly. I hate this, he whispered. I hate feeling scared all the time. Jungkook's anger shattered instantly into something softer, something painful, because Jimin rarely admitted fear out loud, and hearing it now made the situation feel terrifyingly real. A loud knock suddenly echoed at the door, both of them flinched. Jungkook immediately stepped in front of Jimin without thinking. Security. A voice called from outside. Jungkook opened the door cautiously. 2 hotel security guards and their manager entered quickly, expressions tense. One immediately examined the balcony area outside while the other carefully took the photograph from Jungkook using gloves. We'll review all security footage immediately, the manager assured them. Nobody unauthorized should have reached this floor. Should have, not couldn't have. Jungkook hated that wording. Jimin remained silent the entire time, arms folded tightly around himself now. Watching him like that made Jungkook's chest feel unbearably tight. Eventually, the security team left after promising increased protection around their floor. The door clicked shut again. Silence returned instantly. But now the room felt contaminated, somehow unsafe. Jimin sat slowly back down on the bed, staring blankly ahead. Jungkook watched him for several seconds before quietly speaking. You're shaking. Fine. Again, Jungkook crouched in front of him carefully. Finally looked at him. And that was all it took. The second eye contact happened, the walls cracked completely. Jimin's breathing hitched suddenly. His composure collapsed so fast it hurt to watch. I'm tired, he whispered brokenly. I'm so tired of pretending this doesn't affect me. Jungkook reached for him instantly. This time Jimin didn't resist at all. The moment Jungkook's arms wrapped around him, Jimin folded forward against him like his body had finally given up holding itself together. His shoulders shook violently. Not loud sobbing, that somehow made it worse, silent crying, the kind that comes from holding too much pain in for too long. Jungkook held him tighter immediately. It's okay, he whispered softly. Jimin gripped the back of his shirt hard enough to wrinkle the fabric. I couldn't breathe during the concert, Jimin admitted shakily against his shoulder. I kept thinking they were somewhere in the crowd watching me. Jungkook closed his eyes briefly. The thought alone made him furious. You should have told me. I didn't want you worrying. That's not your decision to make. Jimin laughed weakly through tears. You sound angry. I am angry. At me? No. Jungkook's arms tightened slightly around him. At whoever keeps making you feel like this. The room fell quiet again except for rain tapping softly against the windows. Jimin slowly relaxed little by little in Jungkook's embrace, though his breathing remained uneven. And Jungkook realized something dangerous. Holding Jimin felt terrifyingly natural, too natural. As if his body already knew exactly how to protect him. After several minutes, Jimin finally pulled back slightly. His eyes were red now, beautiful and exhausted. Sorry, he murmured. Jungkook frowned immediately. Why are you being dramatic? No, Jungkook said firmly. You're scared. Looked stunned by how simply Jungkook said it. No judgment, no discomfort, just truth. And suddenly Jimin smiled faintly again through lingering tears. You always make things sound easier. Because you overcomplicate everything. That's rich coming from you. Jungkook almost smiled back, almost, but then something caught his attention. A faint red mark near Jimin's wrist. Jungkook frowned immediately. What's that? Jimin instinctively pulled his sleeve down, too late. Jungkook gently caught his wrist before he could hide it completely. His heartbeat slowed instantly. There were scratches, fresh ones, small crescent-shaped marks against pale skin, not deep, but enough to make concern spread sharply through Jungkook's chest. What happened? Jimin avoided his eyes. Nothing. Jimin. Silence. Then finally, I get anxious sometimes. Answer was quiet, embarrassed. Jungkook understood immediately, and the realization hurt more than he expected. Jimin must have noticed the change in his expression because he quickly pulled his wrist away. It's stupid. No, Jungkook said softly. Jimin looked genuinely uncomfortable now, like he regretted revealing too much. He swallowed hard. Sometimes when panic gets really bad, I don't notice what I'm doing. Jungkook's chest ached. How long had this been happening? How much had Jimin hidden from everyone? Jungkook suddenly remembered all the oversized hoodies lately, the long sleeves even in warm rooms, the constant I'm fine. Guilt hit him hard, because maybe he noticed too late. Jimin looked away again, voice barely audible now. See why I didn't want to tell anyone? Jungkook stared at him quietly for a moment. Then he reached forward carefully and pulled Jimin's sleeve back down over the scratches himself. Gentle, protective. Not disgusted, not afraid, just careful. When Jungkook finally spoke, his voice was softer than before. You don't have to hide from me.